this groove, feel my own adrenaline. Yeah, I do just what I do, and I hope you let me in, yeah.
Hello and welcome back, fellow anime lovers, to Cypherfics. I am delighted to have you join us once again in the world of fanfiction and fantasy. This is the second part of, What If Issei, Rias meet Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Special note, this fanfic is written and a masterpiece of Scott the Wanderer on FANFICTIONnet. Do check and support the author too. Now smash the like, share and subscribe button for more. Also press the bell icon so that you never miss such great parts. Thanks for the introduction. Now let's dive into the world. What the hell was that? Kiba Yuto was flat on his back staring up at the sky, his ears ringing, and his whole body felt like one massive bruise. He didn't need to look around to know that Akino, Kaneko, and even Rias were all in similar positions. I thought we told him no flashbangs. Kaneko was curled up into a ball of pain. Confident there would be no flashbang, she had opened her senses fully. Now she was paying an awful price, as it felt like giants were striking a gong over and over again in her ear. Era, my naughty kohai has an S-side, Akino all but purred even as she stayed still so as to avoid throwing up. I'm sorry, I can't hear a thing over the ringing in my ears, Rias responded as she tried to sit up, only to have a wooden bokken placed to her throat. You cheated. Xander just flashed that lopsided grin of his before helping Rias to her feet, then following suit with Kiba, Akino and finally Kaneko. He did feel a little sorry for Kaneko being hurt so badly, but it was better the point was illustrated this way and not on an actual battlefield. Alright, you should be able to hear me now. Does anyone want to venture a guess as to why you lost so badly? You cheated, Rias repeated in a slight huff. We said no flashbang and you used one. Xander-senpai is a cheat. Kaneko nearly hissed. Xander baka giving me a migraine. Akino's eyes lit up with an unholy combination of wrath and lust. Era, Xander-kun needs to be punished. This wasn't a fair fight, Kiba groaned as he nursed some of the tiny bruises littering his body. One thing you all need to get through your heads right now, Tanstaff. Xander was tempted to adopt his drill sergeant Harris voice, but decided to save that for later. There's ain't no such thing as a fair fight. Fair is for board games. The enemy will cheat, you should do the same. Of course I used a flashbang. I don't have Kaneko's strength and durability. I don't have Kiba's speed. I don't have Akino's or Rias magic. What I do have is a lot of combat experience and a ton of tricks up my sleeve. After the flashbang stunned a lot of you, I tripped the training claymores I planted here before you all arrived. If I had been a fallen angel or an exorcist, you'd all be dead now. Hell forbid some stray devil with military training gets the drop on you. So not only do we have a lot of work to do on learning how to cheat, but on our situational awareness as well, Rias groaned as she began to rub her temples. Yep, but it won't take too long, Xander gave a wolfish grin. 2 hours of group training a day then surprise individual sessions should instill the proper level of constant vigilance and a nice repertoire of dirty tricks by the end of the month. Or it could trigger a paranoid psychotic break. We're doomed. Kaneko groaned. And why am I carrying you all the way to my house again? Xander wasn't sure if he was in paradise or Tartarus at the moment. Rias Gremory, arguably one of the sexiest women he'd ever seen, let alone touched, was riding him piggyback style. She was so exhausted that she was slumped against him, pressing those wonderful melons into his back. Because you wore all of us out with training, you brute, Rias' teasing tone made it clear she was far from upset about the ordeal. She had learned a lot from Xander in just one day. I'd never considered using the power of destruction as a shield before. I just wish he hadn't driven us into the ground so strong. Rias snuggled into her pawn's back a little more. I barely had enough energy to send everyone else home. Alright, I get that, and I fully accept responsibility for wearing you out. I should have started with conditioning drills, Xander conceded as he continued down the street, and arguably using 6 pitching machines to lob baseballs at you for dodging practice was little much, but that doesn't explain why you want to go to my house. I'm too exhausted to bathe myself, let alone cook dinner, Rias explained with a small grin of her own. It had been nearly a week since Xander's appearance in her life. The time for mourning the loss of Issei was coming to a close. After all, she'd only known him for a few weeks. Now was the time for her to start really teasing her new servant. I thought you, being the gentleman you are, could help me, Xander Kuhn. Pausing in his tracks, Xander nearly dropped Rias. That was partially due to shock, and partially the mental imagery of helping bathe Rias. He'd never been accused of having a poor imagination, but at this moment it was causing an issue. Not only were his jeans getting tight, his mind was entering the dangerous blue screen of death mode. Be bathe you? Oh, does someone have fantasies about sharing a bath with me? Rias cooed in Xander's ear as she used what little energy she had to wriggle against him. I could have so much fun with this. Well, it's your lucky night, Xander Kuhn. Ever since I read the KMSTR, Xander nodded as his face fell into a goofy grin. I've wanted to help a girl bathe like a husband is supposed to help his wife. Cordelia and I never moved past second base. Faith's idea of romance was giving a 10-minute warning. Anya, for all that I loved her, didn't see the point if there weren't orgasms to be had. After Sunnydale I just never seriously dated another girl, despite what those comics say. So one lifelong Xander fantasy just never got fulfilled. I've never actually read the KMSTR, I assumed it was just a sec book, Rias mused as Xander seemed to get his bearings back, but if that what my Xander Kuhn wants as a reward for training us all so well, then he can bathe me after every session. You win this round, Bucho-chan. Oh me, I've stumbled upon the great Rias Gremory when she's too exhausted to even lift a finger. The gleeful edge to Calawarner's voice spoke volumes of just what she would love to do to the crimson-haired devil. Flipping her navy blue hair back over her shoulder, the sultrily dressed fallen angel formed a golden light spear, and she's riding such a tempting morsel. I'll tell you want, Gremory-san, surrender now and I'll let you watch as I RPE your boy toy before you die. Rainier made me miss out on enjoying the pervert. Flashback. But why? Issei Hayadu asked as he clutched the light spear protruding from his belly. I thought you could have at least one day of happiness before you died, Issei-kun. Rainier wouldn't look into his eyes. Kala would have spent the day raping you. Donasek would have played with you like a cat does a mouse. As for Middlet. Rainier visibly shuddered. You don't need that imagery before you die. Why, me? Issei coughed up some BLD as Rainier had dissipated the spear. You have some sacred gear that is scaring their boss shitless, Rainier sighed. Now just stop talking, it just makes it more painful. Just drift off to sleep and soon you'll be in paradise. End flashback. You're the Kala that Rainier warned Issei about. Xander's voice dipped into a low, rumbling growl as he began to set Rias on her feet. I hate rapists, he muttered as he flicked out his hands, a metallic cha-chk echoing in the street as the dragon's hand twice critical manifest on both hands. Bring it. Twice critical. Ah, so the little pervert lived long enough to tell his tale. Raytan must be getting soft, Calawarner cackled as she casually threw her light spear at Xander before forming another one. Yes, I am Calawarner. Remember it as you'll be screaming it when you beg me to stop. Xander was almost insulted at the softball slow approach of the first light spear. He'd practiced with his slayers on dodging spears that they threw at full speed. Surging forward he backhanded the attack away, ignoring the searing pain it caused in his arm even through the gauntlet. Wrapping one hand around Calawarner's throat, Xander's hand was just large enough to start a good BLD choke. Calawarner's eyes widened in shock. He's fast. She tried to pull away from the hand gripping her throat only to feel the fingertips squeeze even harder. In her panic she had forgotten she had even formed another spear for a moment. However, that moment passed and she tried to drive the weapon into Xander's gut. Xander saw the flash of movement and acted quickly. Grabbing Kala's arm by the wrist, he savagely twisted it, causing a very audible crack as he broke both ulna and wrist in one motion. The light spear dissipated, but unfortunately the distraction and Xander's blind spot left him open. Erga. You bstrd. I'll kill you. Kalawarner screamed rage as the adrenaline began flowing. Forming another light spear and shoving it into the arm that was holding her throat. Rargurg. Xander's roar of pain echoed down the street as he tossed Kalawarner away from him. His left arm was limp by his side as the light spear dissipated, showing that not only had his bicep and tricep been pierced but his humerus was severed. Despite this, Xander was still standing. You ruined my shirt. I liked this shirt. Dear God, he should be on the ground moaning about how much pain he is in. Not looking at me like he's deciding if my ribcage would make a nice hat. Kalawarner backpedaled away from what she assumed was a deranged monster. It was amazing how quickly she could go from angry to scared. No. Stay away. With that, she jumped into the air and began flying at her top speed back to the church. Rias was astonished. She'd been prepared to act using the last of her magical reserves to kill the fallen to save Xander, but it had been unnecessary. In less than 5 seconds, Xander had wounded and driven off Kalawarner all on his own. Unfortunately, he had taken a rather horrific wound doing so. DMN, I have enough magic to close the wound, but that's it. Xander panted out a few deep calming breaths as he carefully tucked the primal back in the cage. He hated letting it loose as it tended to go completely overboard. Now that the adrenaline was fading, Xander could feel all his wounds. I really did a number to myself. I'm getting sloppy. Reaching behind his back with his good hand, he grabbed one of the special bottles out of his dimensional pocket. Bucho-chan, I am going to need some help. Please. Of course, Xander-kun. Rias rushed to his left side as she prepared the spell to staunch the bleeding, only to have Xander shove what looked to be a soy sauce bottle filled with glowing green liquid inside. Xander, I am trying to. Just sprinkle this in the wounds. Xander sank to his knees as the BLD loss was making him too dizzy to keep standing. I'll explain after. Alright, Rias quickly flicked open the top and started dashing some of the green liquid into the gaping wound on his arm. Immediately it began to fizz and then steam rose from the hole. Before Rias' eyes, the missing marrow began to form, attaching to 2 bone fragments. Xander quickly grabbed his lower arm and held it in position as deposits of calcium and bone were forming around the marrow. BLD vessels began to grow, as did sinew and then skin. In just under a minute, the only hint that Xander had an arm hanging by a thread was the BLD that soaked his shirt and pants. Amazing. Mora BLD, one of best healing agents in the world. Xander gently took the bottle back and started sprinkling some on the burn from batting the light spear away, incredibly strong to come by. I only happened to have some as there were 3 of them sent to kill me. Rias stared at the bottle as if it was the most precious of treasures. We have something like that in the underworld. The tears of the Phoenix clan can heal and restore stamina, but they are rare. Well, this stuff is good for healing as well as turning the undead into a normal human, Xander explained as he closed the cap and quickly tucked the bottle away. Would have used it on Ampada, but never got the chance. Well, if there is a multiverse, then I am sure one of you got the chance. Rias placed a comforting hand on Xander's shoulder and then kissed his cheek. Thank you. For what, Bucho-chan? Xander was just a bit perplexed. I usually end up receiving an hour-long lecture/rant for getting in the way. Fighting off that fallen, Rias snuggled into Xander's side just a bit, pressing her curves against him. I could have taken her, but I likely wouldn't wake up until noon tomorrow if I had. OMU. Rias's orgasmic moans echoed in Xander's bathroom. From the cries of pleasure, any eavesdroppers would assume Xander was either orally pleasuring her or her stupid. The truth was much cleaner. In reality, Xander was massaging her scalp as he washed her hair. That feels so good. I don't know if I could ever go back to doing it myself. A literal hair trigger. Xander muttered under his breath as he continued his self-appointed task. Rias had insisted that he bathe with her, so he was currently pressed between the back of the tub and the crimson-locked vixen. Her moans of delight from just washing her back and hair were having a very pronounced effect on his second head. Well, you can command me to do this for you every night. At least until you get married. I doubt your husband would appreciate a lowly commoner touching his wife. Rias was snapped out of her orgasmic bliss at the oblique reference to her fiancé. Mao, how I hate Riser even more now. Keeping me away from my Xander. She was tempted to refute what he said, but she had resolved not to lie to him at all. How do you know I will be marrying another noble? Only makes sense, you're practically devil royalty from what I gathered, Xander mused as he began to rub her neck, working out the kinks that were presently trying to form. You're the heiress of an important family. There aren't many families that allow their heirs to marry for love. So, you're likely in a contract to another noble, but not an heir. One day I will convince you to tell me how you do that. Rias's voice hitched as Xander's ministrations caused another surge of pleasure. Yes, I am betrothed to Riser Phoenix, the third son of the Phoenix clan. Rias paused again, struggling to find the right words. He is a philandering pig. His peerage is full of women, and it's no secret he forces himself on a number of them. His only longing in marrying me is to improve his station and to keep me barefoot and pregnant. He's already threatened to have Kiba gelded once I marry him. You are so much more a threat to him, so I have no idea of how he'll act. Xander paused for a moment as he tried to picture the kind of jerk-off this Riser was. Images of Warren Mears came to mind. Images of the scrawny misogynist pawing at Rias flooded his imagination. He unconsciously released a slightly possessive growl at the thought, if you want, I will gladly kill him even if they declare me a stray. No. Rias shook her head wildly, they'd torture you to death for that. She was shaking in panic that Xander would ignore her protest and still strike out against Riser. I will find a way to end the engagement without losing you, or the others. We have a few years before the wedding, right now we need to focus on rescuing that nun friend of yours. If you say so, Bucho-chan. Xander had to take a moment to clear his head. Wow, I almost went full alpha primal on the girl. I need to calm down. How did I get in the bed? Xander questioned as he opened his eye and looked to the ceiling. He'd set out his bedroll at the foot of the bed and racked out almost immediately after dinner. Now it was morning and he could tell he'd spent most the night in the same bed as Rias, both of them naked. You were having a nightmare. Rias sat up, seeming to not caring at all that she was exposing her lovely assets to Xander. She did note with some amusement that he was a BRST man. He was just far more subtle than Issei. I think you were fighting the man that took your eye. Caleb. It kept happening over and over and I just couldn't let you suffer. You levitated me into bed, stripped my clothes, and cuddled me. Xander wasn't really asking. The last time he'd had the dreams it was the mother of two of his slayers who'd done that. Before that some of the Sunnydale survivors would have to. Hell, even Kennedy had taken a turn, then teased him about being the only man she slept with. It had never been SXL, just comfort. Thank you, Bucho-chan. You are most welcome, Xander-kun. Rias grinned as she leaned down and kissed his cheek, although I have to ask. Fought a minotaur. The locals insisted I had to eat the heart raw and thus what you see. Xander sighed as he knew exactly what she was going to ask. Not the strangest custom I was introduced to, at least it had some positive effects. I'll say. Hayadu-san. Xander turned to face the familiar female voice. His eye hardened just a little and his fist clenched reflexively. Just keep calm. She might have killed the kid, but she wasn't a complete monster about it. Adopting his happy-to-help face he addressed the fallen angel, Rainier-san. This is an unexpected meeting. I would have set up some lovely surprises if I knew you were going to be here. If you leave and come back in an hour, I am sure I can arrange one hell of a bang. You really are him. When Asia-chan described you I thought some jerk-off was cosplaying as you. Rainier's voice was barely above a whisper as she spoke. I know I don't deserve it, but I need your help. Otherwise Asia-chan is going to end up like Issei-kun. What the? Actual remorse. I didn't see that in Issei's memory. Xander frowned for a moment. You did kill the kid, painfully I might add. Now you're threatening to kill one of my girls. If you know who I am, you know how bad a move that is. I didn't want to. I don't want to kill any humans. I fell because of my love for a human. Rainier snapped back. I'm just deep undercover. Someone in the Grigori is planning something bad. Big capital letters, bold face, and underlined. Azazel still has no clue what it is, and my assignment might give us the only warning we're gonna get. Rainier took a breath to calm down. I've seen the series. I know you can help Asia. Xander face-bombed for a moment. I wish, Rainier scoffed. Our group was ordered to eliminate Issei-kun. I wasn't about to let one of those freaks torment that sweet boy. He was a massive pervert, you know. Oh, I know, I watched him for weeks. Rainier smirked. He would have been great boyfriend material, never complaining when I bring home girls. Xander raised his hand. Alright, stop right there. I don't need to be sporting wood when I go back to class. Let me guess, you've been ordered to kill Asia. Killing would be a kindness, Rainier huffed. Somehow Calawarner got her hands on the prototype sacred gear extractor. From what Azazel told me, he had to redesign the whole thing because instead of a fast painless process it was a long torture session. Not just physical pain, but rending at the soul. Alright, I can make like El Mariachi, take out the others and you escape with Asia. No, I need to stay undercover. Escaping with Asia would just leave her right in the path of that monster, Rainier countered with a shake of her head. There are also 50 rogue exorcists holed up in that church. Tonight I will convince Fried Selzen to interrupt a devil summoning and suggest he take Asia along to teach her the ropes. She paused for a moment. Definitely kill him, if you can. I don't like this plan. Surprisingly it was Akino who spoke first after Xander relayed the events of his meeting. The Yamato Nadeshiko crossed her arms under her bust as she spoke. That fallen is the one that killed Issei. She could be setting a trap for Xander-kun. Far more likely she's been discovered and the others are setting a trap without her knowledge, Xander supplied with a shrug. As for her killing Issei, after meeting Calawarner last night, I think she was doing the kid a favor. If you had resurrected him after that beach was done, you'd be lucky if he didn't run screaming from any female. Well, Rainier-san likely believes you will be arriving alone, Kiba ventured, and likely this exorcist will set a barrier after you arrive so we can't use a normal magic circle to come to your aid. Perhaps we should turn their expectations back upon them. That's my thought, Xander smirked. We don't need to wait for tonight. Sure, the student council will get a little angry with us, but it's not the first time I skipped class for slayage. We stormed the church now when they aren't expecting anything. Besides, I have a new toy I haven't got to play with yet. Dare I ask what you consider a toy? Rias eyed her pawn with a slight bit of trepidation. He looks far too giddy. Puff the magic dragon, lived by the sea. Xander began to sing. It's time, Asia. The fallen angel Donasik held out his hand for the former nun. Even inside the church he was dressed in his trench coat and fedora. Soon you will be on your way to your reward. You're more than a day early, Donasik, Rainier sneered at the man. God, I really hate working under them. Tomorrow night is the full moon. You should really learn to read a calendar. And really need to learn to notice when you are being followed. Middle formed a pink light spear, placing the tip at the brunette's throat. Give me an excuse, I haven't had a taste of fallen angel flesh in some time. Middle-sama, there is no need to threaten Rainier-sama. Asia stood up from where she was kneeling. I will come along. Oh, but we need this beach, too, Dohansik smirked. She's going to be the battery for our little device. Oh, Rainier muttered. I feel naked without a cross, Xander muttered as he stepped past the front gate of the church's property. He was dressed in his light combat garb. Black jeans, work boots, black t-shirt, tactical vest loaded with plate carrier, arm pads, and knee pads. The final piece was a, "Hello, my name is, Hail to the King," name tag. Everyone ready? Call them out by the numbers. Pawn is ready. Knight is ready. Kiba had changed into his light kendo armor without the helmet. He had his favored sword sheathed by his side and had added some grenades to his belt that were gifts from Xander. Rook is ready. Kaneko was dressed in her gym clothes, a simple white shirt and blue shorts. She had pads on her elbows and knees as well as a pair of weighted MMA gloves with a cat paw print on them. She wasn't carrying any grenades, but did have several sets of HNDCFFS. Queen is ready. Akino was completely enjoying the atmosphere. Dressed as the Miko she had been trained to be from a young age, she was no less ready for battle than the rest. King is ready. Rias felt a little odd taking orders from her pawn, but she was bowing to experience. She was still dressed in her school uniform, but like Kiba had added some grenades to her arsenal. Rook, open this jar of pickles. Xander smirked as he quoted the show that Kaneko had insisted they had to watch together. Score, she almost smiled. Xander Baka, Kaneko muttered as she surged forward and gave the main doors of the church a mighty kick. The results were nearly explosive. The twin 20-foot doors were completely blown off their hinges and landed amongst the pews on each side of the aisle. Look at some shitty devils coming to the house of God. Fried Selzen was far too excited. The blonde-haired man in priest robes was marching in place. I am going to be your confessor today, you shitty devils. So just save yourself some trouble and jump on my light sword. Well, you devil girls can jump on my PP first. Not the lowly though, I do have standards. Even if she is super adorable. Next to that, the other 50 exorcists looked rather sane as they only had murderous looks in their eyes as they lit their own light swords. Oh, you don't mind if we make this a GNGBNG, do you? Fried asked, an actual tinge of curiosity in his voice. My colleagues here want to have some fun carving you up. I, Rias Gremory, heiress of the House of Gremory, will give you just one chance to surrender. Rias stepped forward flanked by Akino and Kiba. You will be allowed to live but will be stripped of all your weapons and tools. Then you will be given coach airfare to the country of your choice. Surrender? Never. There's 4 of you shitty devils. Fried started to reply. 5. Rias corrected him as a whirring sound filled the air. 5. I only see 4. And what is causing that sound? Fried asked. Now. Rias said as she spread her wings and leapt to the air. Kaneko, Kiba, and Akino followed suit. This is my BRRT stick. Xander had been standing behind his new friends, legs braced for the mayhem he was about to unleash. While the others had been talking, he'd pulled out his latest birthday gift from the council, an XM214 microgun that Andrew and Willow had enchanted just for him, including a spell for recoil reduction and endless ammo. He'd only ever been able to take it to the range, so this was the true trial by fire. Currently the barrels were whirling at speed and Xander's finger just pulled the trigger. Oh F me. Fried had just enough time to realize what was happening before the trigger was pulled. As the first few rounds exploded out of the barrels, he dove for the only cover worth a DMN, the granite cross behind the altar. BRT. The other exorcists weren't as lucky. Xander was liberally spraying the temple with high-velocity jacketed lead. None of them were able to escape as they were peppered with scores of rounds. BLD sprayed everywhere from the dead and dying. Men were torn apart. Arms or legs were torn off. Some skulls even exploded. Xander kept firing for 2 full minutes before easing up on the trigger and letting the barrels cool. That was fun. Xander grinned widely as he addressed Rias and the other who were holding their hands over their ears. Fun? What kind of psychopath are you? Fried peeked out from behind the cross. BRRTT. Xander released a few hundred rounds at the cross Fried was hiding behind. Nobody was talking to you, altar boy. Oi, you take that back, right F now. Fried cried out as he fired his gun blindly around the cross. Or what, you'll shoot in my general direction. Xander laughed as the rounds went wide, not even coming within 10 feet of him. I can do this all day. I bet you can, Psycho-kun, but the nun and the fallen slot don't have that long. Fried reloaded his pistol and prepared for another volley. They're having a draining experience in the basement. Pawn, I will handle him, Kiba called out as he drew his sword. Landing with a soft thump, he dashed towards the cross and delivered a slash. A moment there was a crack as a diagonal cut appeared near the base and the majority of the cross slipped off the pedestal. Greetings Exorcist-san, my name is Kiba Yuto, Knight of Rias Gremory. I will be your opponent. Oh, so you bat for the other team, Devil-kun? Fried abandoned his non-existent cover, and readied his sword. I am flattered even if I don't swing that way. Why does everyone assume that witty, urbane, and polite means homosexual? Kiba's tone was calm, but there was a pulsing vein in his forehead. Channeling some of his fury in his strikes, Kiba went on the offensive. Now this is more like it, Fried was back to having a ball. He lived for killing, but a good fight was always nice. Show me what you have, Devil-kun. They didn't bother with any magical traps, Rias said after a brief examination of the altar that was sitting atop the stairs. They must have thought 50 exorcists would be enough. There are 3 triggers for moving the altar, but Pawn ruined all of them with his toy. Aquino sighed heavily as had performed the more physical inspection. We'll have to destroy it. Move. Kaneko muttered before she just simply ripped the altar out of the floor and tossed it aside. Done. Thanks. Rook-chan, Xander had stashed his micro-gun already, mainly as lugging it around was a chore. Bounding down the stairs with the girls on his heels, he stopped cold at the sight before him. Asia had been stripped down to just a thin cotton chemise before being chained up to macabre cross adorned with acidic green runes. The nun was limp in the chains, her eyes barely open as her face was twisted up in agony. As if the scene was not morbid enough, Rainier was chained to a similar cross, only its runes were blue and she'd been stripped naked. Oh look, if it isn't the Crimson Beach's boy toy, come to save them. Calla Warner sneered as she greeted Xander. Well, you can have them, if you can get past my friends. We meet again, Gremory Dono, except this time you are the interloper. Donasek formed a light spear in each hand. Perhaps now we will see if you have the ability to match your family name. Ah, Donasek, I do remember you, Rias smirked as she called forth a pair of mandalas. We won't be having a third encounter. Oh my, you look absolutely delicious, Miko-san, Middle grinned wide, showing that her teeth were all razor-sharp. I could feast on you for days before you die. Era, the first person to offer to eat me, and it isn't Xander-kun. Fate is so cruel to me. Aquino faked a swoon. Pawn, Rook, we'll take care of these two, Rias called out. Get Asia and Rainier out of here. The ego of you lower creatures astounds me, Donasek snarled. You won't handle us, we'll slaughter you. With that proclamation he threw both of the spears he'd formed at Rias, only for them to be blocked by Rias' shield with seemingly no effort on her part. You can dish it out, but can you take it? Aquino's smile became sadistic as she conjured lightning to throw at the fallen duo. Beach, that nearly singed my hair, Middle screamed as she barely dodged the lightning. Xander-san, it's you. You came. Asia's tired face lit up with joy when she recognized him. Lady Rainier said you would. Yeah, it's me, Xander whispered back as he brushed her hair back behind her ear before he started unfastening the chain around her neck. We're getting you out of here. Then we're going out for burgers and Twinkies, hit the arcade, just have some fun. How does that sound? Sounds like fun. Asia agreed, but I don't think I can. What are you talking about? Of course you can, Xander tried to laugh it off, like Asia was trying for a joke. But then he saw the light leaving her eyes as she stopped breathing. Asia, wake up, Asia. Oh, did I forget to tell you that the nun only had seconds to live? Calla Warner asked in a mocking tone. A lowly human can't survive having the sacred gear extracted by this device. It's why Azazel-sama decommissioned it. She continued on, it also normally needs a specific ritual to provide the power needed, but draining most of Rainier life force was a suitable substitute. Kaneko-chan, take Asia and Rainier outside. Xander's voice was even and calm with not one hint of a joke. His normally warm eye was cold and dead. I have something to discuss with this beach. I am supposed to protect you, senpai, Kaneko argued even as she shattered the remaining chains. Just do as I ask, you don't need to see this. One normal tear flowed down from his right eye and a milky white one seeped from under his patch. I'll be out in a few minutes. Oh, it will take longer than a few minutes, Xander-kun, Calawarner sneered. I am going to beat you within an inch of your life, and RPE you to the point of death before I heal you. I'll do it over and over again, until you are so broken you won't even remember words. Then I'll start on that swordsman and then your wares. Too bad I couldn't keep the nun alive. She would have been so much fun too. Cha-thunk. Shut up. Xander roared as he backhanded the fallen angel across the face. As he had unconsciously activated the twice critical, the dragon's hand broke Calawarner's jaw. She was worth 1,000,000 of you. Twice critical. Feeling the surge of strength, Xander delivered an uppercut to Calawarner's diaphragm, expelling every bit of air from her lungs. He followed up by stomping on her left knee, shattering the joint by bending it backwards. He did the same to her right elbow as she lay on the floor writhing in pain. Rainier, Kiba, Kaneko, Akino, and especially Bucho-chan are each worth 1,000,000 of you. With each word, Xander delivered a brutal kick to Calawarner's ribs and kidneys. He was laying on the pain in an all-out attempt to cripple the fallen angel. Calawarner was in shock. The twilight healing should have made her invincible. She'd imagined she would be able to recover from any damage in seconds. It had been an appealing dream, that was becoming a nightmare. How was I supposed to know it doesn't work automatically? She mentally bemoaned as she attempted to concentrate enough to heal her jaw, only to be derailed by the blow to her gut. Thinking of healing was made difficult when struggling to breathe correctly was an issue. Then came the destruction of a knee and elbow before the nigh endless rain of pain pummeled her into. I'm going to be killed by a lowly devil. Wait, he stopped. I just need a few minutes. Xander's rage was far from sated, but he wanted to plan exactly how he would make his displeasure known. He paused in his beating to take stock on what shape he had beaten the fallen into. That's when he noticed the green aura surrounding the wounds, healing them. Asia's sacred gear. You're much better than I was told, Devil-kun. Fried loved the whole backhanded compliments in a fight. You were supposed to be some wet behind the ears whelp who still believed there were rules in a battle to the death. I had Tanstaff beat into me rather effectively, Kiba admitted with a wry grin. Locking blades with Fried, he delivered a knee directly to the exorcist's groin with everything he had. Erf. Fried screamed out as he was quite effectively racked. The church hadn't thought to geld him at all, as his project was meant to be bred for more. All the strength in his limbs vanished, as did his ability to breathe. You, cheating, bstrd. My parents were married, Kiba grinned as he kicked the sword and gun away from Fried before moving behind him to deliver the chokeout Xander had taught him. Woohoo, I am having so much fun. Akino licked her lips in joy as she channeled more lightning into Gothic Lolita Fallen. She hadn't come out of the fight completely unscathed. There was a bleeding bite mark on her left BRST, but that hadn't slowed her down much. Would you like another, MIT-10? Yes. Oh goody. Where? Middled groaned through bloody gums. She'd been unprepared for Akino to actually pull out all her sharpened teeth with a spell. She had become feared for her vicious bite and voracious gluttony so much she had neglected maintaining her skills when spear or spell. Now she was just a twitching mass of flesh on the floor that Akino kept shocking with ever-increasing voltages. Now that's rude, Akino shook her head sadly as she readied a true attack rather than playing with her victim. If you can't be civil, I will just have to end you. Thunder Lance. A magic sigil appeared above Middlet and a torrent of lightning poured down on the terrified Middlet. The fallen tried to scream, but it was far too late. Her blood boiled, her flesh burned away, her brain was turned to ash, and finally her bones reduced to a fine powder. Oh my, I might have overdone it, Yufufu. Stupid Xander-senpai, Kaneko groused as she made her way out of the church with a much larger girl over each shoulder. I will eat his Twinkies for this. Despite being angered over the order Xander had given her, Kaneko had followed them. Mostly as his instincts screamed at her to do so. Something about his aura had shifted and he'd felt more animal. It's like one moment he was a normal devil and the next like me. Seeing Kiba end his fight with the exorcist, Kaneko figured she had carried the girls far enough. She laid Asia and Rainier on the only intact pew before approaching her friend, dead. Unconscious, Kiba replied with a shrug, I figured we'd want to interrogate someone and I doubt the others will leave anyone alive. Here, in case he wakes up, Kaneko handed Kiba 2 sets of cuffs. Is this all the famous Princess of Ruin is capable of? Danasik mocked as he fired another pair of light spears. Rias avoided both as by just the slimmest of margins. I am singularly unimpressed. Then you are terminally stupid, Rias smirked as she began to form her first attack. The power of destruction was coalescing into a small box shape that anyone with military training would recognize. I've been playing rope-a-dope and you fell for it. Now you can be the first victim of Claymore of Oblivion. With that pronunciation the box exploded into thousands of small ball of power of destruction spraying them forth in an expanding cone of death towards Danasik. The fallen angel didn't even get the chance to evade the attack, not that he had the energy to. When the dust cleared there was nothing but a 40-foot long gouge in the stone of the basement floor and wall. It could use a bit of refinement, Rias sighed as she examined the aftermath. Calawarner's screams of pain and terror echoed in the church making everyone still conscious flinch in response. That doesn't sound good, Kiba said as he looked to the entrance to the basement area. What do you think Xander-kun is doing? Something dark, Kaneko deadpanned. What do you mean? Ria's head whipped around to regard her rook. Xander-kun isn't evil. Agreed, he's not being evil, Kaneko replied with a nod. Just dark. He sent me away so I wouldn't witness it. Akino looked to the stairs as her own thoughts whirled in her head. Xander has to know that Kaneko has witnessed my SDSM many times. How bad can it be? Xander was covered in so much BLD that one would have guessed he swam in it if it hadn't only been coating his front. Unlike normal there was no smile on his lips and no cheerfulness in his eye. While he was no stranger to the deaths of friends, each of them always hit equally strong. I retrieved her rings. You did? Rias perked up as she saw the twin rings that were twilight healing. Put them on her. If we act quickly enough, then Asia can join us for a victory party. Author's notes. Xander's physical prowess. In Buffy canon by the time of Season 7, Xander is one of the strongest completely normal humans in the Buffyverse. This is illustrated in the fact that he can knock a fledgling vampire out with a punch. Sure he doesn't match up to supernatural heroes or the drag-enhanced initiative soldiers, but he'd dominate most other humans. Since DxD Xander has a bit of fanon worked in as well as being a devil he's a lot more physically powerful. Xander is now equal to a just-woken baby Slayer or minion-level vamp. Since being a devil effectively removes limits that can increase. No, he will never be an equal to Serorg without using the boosted gear or something similar, but he's still damned impressive. Xander's magical prowess. Xander is gonna have a ton of power, but little to no control unless the magic is destructive, protective, or lewd. The last is remnants of Issei's potential and a bit of a curse for the love spell incident. Xander's toys. Xander has a lot of fun weapons in his dimensional space mostly because his friends gave up on Frey adjacent and started to arm him for bear. The XM214 was a gift from Riley that Andrew and Willow had fun modifying. Boosted gear. Unlike Issei who just had the one gauntlet, Xander's boosted gear covers both arms. No, this is not a subspecies. It's just how it manifests for Xander. New attacks. The Gremory group will develop new attack types based on how Xander trains with them. Rias was so impressed with the Claymore mines she just had to make her own version. So what excuse did you give Shitori Kaishu concerning our absence this afternoon? Xander was pulling on his t-shirt as he left the men's locker room to join the others. Considering the amount of BLD that had soaked through his clothes, he needed a lot longer to shower than even the girls. Thankfully, as it hadn't dried, it wasn't all that strong to wash out. Even the clothes had been salvageable. Seltzer water and lemon was all that was needed. I'm only asking because we have a great opportunity to show Asia the sights. Well, I told Sona-chan the truth as she is the other king of this territory. Rias paused for a moment. Since she was not returning to class, she had dressed in a white and red striped halter top and jeans. The usual for that is investigating a recently reported haunting. That gives us a reasonable excuse for going out afterwards. Score, it's only 3 now, we can have a full evening of fun and still have time for our schoolwork. Xander grinned wide. Only thing is, I only got enough to treat myself and Asia. Relax, Xander-kun. Surzek-sama has already wired us the bounties for the capture of Freed as well as acquisition of all those light swords, Akino assured him as she stood up and smoothed out her clothes. She had opted for casual attire of a simple lavender blouse and black skirt. Though your share might be a bit lower, as the cleanup team reported that a few of their members were traumatized. Wait a minute, we get paid for slayage? Xander's eyebrows nearly met his hairline. I didn't see a cent from the council until we revived it, and even then it wasn't much. The watchers were assholes. Kaneko supplied, looking up from her tablet for a moment. She was wearing a cream sweater over a dark blue blouse and skirt. I really should start watching the series so I can understand what everyone is referring to instead of relying on Gasper-kun. Kiba shook his head with a chuckle. He was wearing a light jacket over a t-shirt and khakis, which was a decidedly different look from his pristine Prince Charming appearance. Oh, and Xander-kun, you owe me big. What? Why? Xander turned to the swordsman just in time to catch the tossed hilt of one of the light swords the exorcists were using. Cool, I always wanted a lightsaber. Ah no, why would you have always wanted a lightsaber? Asia had just come out of the women's locker room, having taken longer to dress as she had to sort through her habits for one that didn't have a bullet hole. Have you known of exorcists for very long? The lightsaber is the signature weapon of the Jedi Knight and Sith. Xander explained, it is a graceful, elegant weapon that takes skill to properly use, but with one, a trained Jedi with a lightsaber can fight armies. A true Jedi uses his abilities for knowledge and defense, never attack. Ah, so you wanted to be Jedi? Asia nodded. When I was younger, Xander nodded, when I discovered the truth about the Midnight Volleyball League, I just thought they'd make great vamp slayage weapons. Now, likely I'll just have fun playing Jedi and Sith with Kiba to work on our speed and situational awareness. Mao Lucifer, Mao Leviathan, Rainier acknowledged the man and woman who had entered the hospital room. Being used as the battery for the sacred gear extractor had nearly killed her, but the sucrose 4 in her arm and some bedrest for a few days would bring her back to health, provided the hospital food didn't kill her. Forgive me for not bowing, but I am sort of chained to the bed. She lifted her arms to show that she was indeed restrained. That is perfectly all right, Rainier-san. Surzek Lucifer smiled benignly. While I am here in an official capacity, I am not much for pomp and ceremony. Azazel Dano has been contacted regarding your situation, Seraphol Leviathan explained with a slight frown on her face, contrasting too much with the magical girl costume she had on. Apparently your cover has been blown, Ray-tan. You cannot return to the Grigori with any guarantee of safety at all. He's asked us to take care of you as a personal favor. Good ol' Uncle Zaz, Rayanra chuckled. I guess you didn't tell him I murdered a human in Devil territory. Oh, I made that very clear, Surzek countered, and I included in the report you only did so to give Issei a less disturbing death. He was quite disappointed and insisted we punish you under our laws. Oh, so this is just to get me healthy before the execution? Rainier asked with a nod to the foredrip. Oh no, Ray-tan, we are applying an alternate punishment. Seraphol smiled wide, one that was designed to keep naughty devils from killing people and reincarnating them in their peerage. Don't worry, I am writing up your personal history so you can fit in at school. School? Couldn't I choose to be executed? I've never eaten food like this, Asia admitted as she looked at the bacon cheeseburger with more than a little interest. Do I use a knife and fork? Xander couldn't help but chuckle. You could, but I prefer this method. Xander flipped his own burger topside down and then took a healthy bite out of it and began chewing. Of course he was eating a triple-stacked bacon cheeseburger, so his was a bit bigger than the other burgers at the table. Oh my. I'll do my best, Asia said as she did her best to emulate Xander. It didn't take more than a second for her face to show the genuine delight she was experiencing. Though if she was honest she wasn't sure if it was the tasty burger, the fact she had real friends, or that Xander was paying attention to her that made her happiest. This is delicious. You think this is great, wait until you have some of Akino's cookies, Xander stage whispered in a faux conspiratorial fashion, they are even better than Mrs. Summer's cookies. Era, Xander-kun likes my cookies, Akino smiled, then as his senpai I will have to make a batch just for him. As long as he is not eating mine, Kaneko gave Xander a bit of the stink eye as she didn't remember offering him any of her treats. You might have to protect me Asia-chan, Xander pretended to cower behind the blonde as he was being stared at, if she punches me, it'll be, to the moon, Xander, but you're too cute to hit. Kaneko continued to give Xander the glare while everyone else was laughing. Alright, Akino-chan, which plushie do you want? Xander asked as he set the airsoft rifle down again. 30 shots and 30 bullseyes just like he had to perform for Kaneko and Asia's plushies. The stoic girl had wanted a Hello Kitty and Asia saw a yellow rat she liked. The game attendant was all smiles even as a ringer was working the gun. He knew that for every marksman like Xander there would be 50 who couldn't even earn a prize. Akino was bouncing on her heels. She was so giddy at the moment. This is almost like a date. She looked over the plushies and saw a stuffed bear that had been damaged, losing an eye and having to be sewn up. I want that one. It reminds me of Xander-kun. And here's the lovely lady's prize, the attendant said as he handed over the bear. Are you going again, Xander-san? Yep, and this is for the black robot up there, Xander said before shouldering the rifle again. In the minute he was allowed, he again got 30 bullseyes. Thanks, this has been fun. He said as he handed over the rifle and got the Gundam Seed plushie. Rias, this is for you. What? How did you? Rias took the offered plushie with a shocked look on her face. You didn't ask. Hardly had to, Xander chuckled, the moment we approached the game your eyes had been all but glued to that one. Thank you, Xander-kun. I still don't understand why the hiatus let you sleep in my bed. We have 2 perfectly good guest rooms. Xander mused aloud as he was washing Ria's hair. He really wasn't expecting a response from his king. She was moaning and writhing in rapture. Of course this was affecting him as her but kept wriggling against his urton. Keep it down, Xander, she doesn't need you being a total perv, he chastised himself mentally. It wasn't doing much good as he could help but think of Rias melons bouncing as she uttered similar moans, and they certainly shouldn't be letting their 16-year-old son bathe with a girl. Oh Mao, this is so good, Rias wrote out her 3rd orgasm since Xander had started washing her. Though she was thankful he didn't linger on her neck too long. She'd nearly blacked out from that the last time. It's because, oh Xander. I used a bit of compulsion on them. It didn't take much at all. Compulsion magic? Xander asked as he continued to wash her hair. I am going to save judgment until I get more facts. Keeping his tone light he carefully tiptoed around a sensitive subject. Did you use any on Issei? No. I hate using them. It feels dirty when I erase memories to keep the secret. I refuse to use them on my family, Rias panted out as she was being worked towards another peak. I only made them not question why I don't live with my parents. Ah, well then I won't need to punish you by withholding bathing privileges, Xander smirked as he felt Rias stiffen under his touch. I know you don't want to order me to service you, so you won't. You're a very good person, Rias, even if you are a touch devious. Thank you, Rias blushed a bit at the compliment. You can imagine devils don't hear that very often. Well, not many humans hear it often enough, Xander shrugged. Now that he was done washing Rias' hair, he started to rinse it out. Given how long she wore it, removing all the lather took some time. So, what have you learned about me lately? You had nightmares about arriving to class naked. You had a great body and half the girls were ready to jump you right then. That you were afraid of clowns. And when you reach a certain point all your fear becomes aggression instead of fear, but even then you are funny. Rias giggled a bit. That and you do not like child abusers. That's putting it mildly. Xander was glad she couldn't see momentary frown. So that was Billy in the coma, right? That was a mess. Yes it was, Rias muttered. I'd probably end up being chased by Riser and his peerage on camels. So a fear of camels mixed with the dread of marrying a philandering man-child who will just treat you like another conquest. Xander mused for a moment as he subconsciously wrapped his hands around Rias' waist now that her hair was rinsed. He wasn't even thinking about how empty a gesture it was, not a too unreasonable fear on the second one, but what happened that you are afraid of camels. My father took me to a petting zoo when I was 5, Rias sighed contentedly even as she was summing up the trauma of her youth. Leaning back against Xander she took comfort in being so close to him. I was delighted because he took me to a human petting zoo, not one of the ones in the underworld. Unfortunately the camel they had there was mean. It spit in my face, kicked father, and then bit me. It was horrible. It took the underworld healers 3 hours to fix my hand. Yeowa, that would do it. Xander replied after a moment. So, ever try to get over your fear? Nope. Rias shook her head. I avoid them and that's all I need to do about it. Ah no. My name is Asia Argento and I am from Italy. Asia announced to the class after being introduced by the teacher. My likes are, helping others, studying the Bible, hamburgers, and Xander Kuhn. My dislikes are, people who harm innocents. My dream is to have many close friends like Xander Kuhn. Please take care of me. Of course she did it that way, Xander face-palmed. He'd let Asia read his Italian copies of the Naruto manga and compare them to the Japanese copies. While the translations were not perfect it was helping her understanding of kanji. The fact that she really liked them helped as well. You dog, you're close with the new chick. Matsuda, for some reason or another, had adopted some of the speech patterns of an American hood rat. Perhaps you could hook a brother up. The only thing I would hook you up with is life support after I stomp you flat, Xander muttered through his hand. Asia was raised in a convent. If either of you try to take advantage of her. We understand, Xander-san, Motohama said quickly. May we speak with her concerning things other than SEC? You two can do that? Xander's shocked face rose from his hand. I mean exactly that. For sure, dog, Matsuda nodded, we are expanding our horizons. We can't spend all our time peeping and watching porn. You mean you found out that girls are not normally attracted to unrepentant perverts who have no other interests? Xander translated. Crude, but accurate, Motohama replied, as such we have joined a few clubs that have nothing to do with seeing women naked. And that's a sign of the oncoming apocalypse, Xander groaned. Okay, Kaneko, I've gotten to know your fighting style pretty well. Xander was in just his sweatpants as he walked onto the mats. His heavily scarred chest and back on full display to everyone in the ORC. You are pretty DMN good. A match for the seasoned baby slayers, but that's because you are stronger and more durable. Skill-wise they are better. I'm going to help you improve as much as I can. Personally I use a mix of Krav Maga, Capoeira, and Defense Lab. Since I can take down a baby slayer half of the time despite being far weaker, I dare say it works. Alright, Kaneko nodded. She was further along in the Buffy series than everyone else. She knew Xander had been pretty impressive as a human with no training. Now it sounded like he'd had some, even if it was informal. I'm also stealing an idea from anime and we're going to abuse the hell out of it. Rias and Aquino made these for you. Xander held out a set of bracelets and anklets. Pump a little devil power in them and they'll act like they are a few hundred pounds. Well below what you can lift, I know, but it will slow down your movements. So it will force you to become faster in order to maintain the same speed. Like the turtle shells in Drag Soball, Kaneko mused as she took the pieces of jewelry and put them on. They were subtle, but feminine enough nobody would blink twice. Without further comment she put them on and supplied the tiny bit of devil power they required. Instantly each of her limbs was weighed down with 400 pounds. She knew exactly how much because it was what she normally did for light curls. Just enough for her to feel some strain and slow her movements. Could be heavier. We're going to slowly increase the weights over time to avoid causing damage to your bones, Xander replied. You will have to add more milk, dairy, and other calcium-rich foods to your diet so your muscles don't crush your skeleton. No probs, Kaneko's lips curled into a slight smile. I love cream. Okay, and now we are getting to possible innuendo territory. Xander chuckled nervously. I am going to start with the basics of Krav Maga, just mimic my movements. If my guess is right, you'll absorb these as fast as any slayer. Alright, now that Asia has healed me up, I am ready for my second but kicking of the day. Xander chuckled as he hefted the practice blade that Kiba had provided with sword BRTH. As he'd requested, it was a traditional BSTRD sword or the half and a half sword. Unlike most people, he understood that the European design was much better at dealing with armored targets than the katana. He still vastly preferred his axe, but his last attempt to pull it from the dimensional pocket had left third-degree burns all the way to his elbow. Alright, since this is a spar to hone skills with the sword, it's considered a game and thus no cheating. I agree, Kiba said as he raised his own sword. Like Xander, he'd chosen the BSTRD sword design for the flexibility of using it single-handedly or with both hands. With a confident smile, Kiba moved his left leg forward and his blade down and to the right so he was in a perfect tuta porta de ferro, or true iron gate guard. As much as I appreciate the lessons in fighting dirty, there are times that one must abandon those tactics. Honor duels, for instance. Xander nodded as he took his stance, the Zornhut, otherwise known as the Guard of Wrath. To the uninitiated. He looked for all the world like batter at the plate awaiting the first pitch. Let's begin. With that, Xander moved with a powerful chop aimed at taking Kiba's leg out of commission. There was no worry of true injury as the blade caused pain and could disable limbs, but would not cause injury. Kiba responded with remarkable speed despite not using his prowess as a knight. His blade intercepted Xander and batted the blow to the side. What he had not been expecting was the sheer power behind the strike. It's like hitting a stone pillar. Yeah, I've got zero chance of being faster than you and less chance of being better with the blade, Xander admitted as he fell back and took the true iron gate guard himself after having his strike battered away. My best bet to put all I have into every attack and hope your arms go numb. It's what most demons try to do to slayers. I am truly going to enjoy dueling you on a regular basis. Kiba smirked as he feinted with a slice to the waist, only to spin the move into a move aimed at Xander's shoulder. The smile grew a bit wider as he managed to graze across the top. I know I should be flattered, Xander responded as he redirected his parry into another slice, but that's just you admitting you want to kick my butt a lot for having some skills. And what will you be teaching me today, Xander-kun? Aquino was still using her normal facade of the perfect Japanese beauty that charmed every male, and quite a few of the females, of Kuo Academy. There was a reason she was the number 2 idol of the school after all. Even dressed as she was in the basic gym clothes of the academy, she radiated grace and sensuality. Unlike Asia, I already know Tai Ch and my skill set allow me to avoid melee rather well. I'd say / if I wasn't sure you didn't know what it was, would think you used lightning armor, Xander chuckled softly. In every spar so far, Akino had used lightning with abandon. Bucho-chan told me you would be the perfect candidate to teach me the basics of magic. Did she now? Akino quirked an eyebrow and glanced over to her king. Rias was currently teaching Asia the very basics of using devil power. The truth was Rias was every bit as skilled in magic as Akino herself was. Their affinities were slightly different, but both of them had expanded their knowledge beyond what came easily. In her best breathy teasing voice, she decided to play with her kohai a little. Well then I guess you will just have to call me sensei. Only if you promise not to behead me in order to breed, Xander quipped back. He'd spent too much time around Anya and Faith to be that easily flustered by flirtatious teasing. Not that a small part of him wasn't jumping in glee that someone like Akino even took the time to tease him. I wouldn't do that, Xander-kun, Akino continued on with her teasing, it would be wasteful to kill such a manly specimen. Xander just started laughing, actually doubling over from it. Tears streamed from his right eye after a minute as he just continued. What is so funny? Akino huffed in no small amount of irritation as the young man she had been flirting with continued to laugh as if he was watching a Robin Williams routine. As it continued she clenched her fist and arcs of electricity began dancing over her hands. I'm sorry. It's just, you could do so much better, Xander's laughter tapered off, I seriously have no clue why you and Bucho-chan flirt with me. I'm just, well me and you could have any guy you wanted. Hell, you probably could have any girl you wanted. I mean I love it, don't get me wrong. I'll miss it when you find the right guy. And in that moment all of Akino's irritation vanished. He's still suffering a bit of an inferiority complex. Thankfully his aggression only comes out when he's facing enemies. Taking a deep breath she put her facade back up, well, how about we start with the lesson? I know you understand some of the basics of Wiccan spell casting, but the magic I used is much faster and less reliant on reagents and foci. I thought as much, Xander nodded, I saw the various sigils and mandalas when you and Bucho-chan used magic. Most beings who use magic use such sigils and mandalas. The different factions and pantheons all have their own versions of these. Rias was schooled in devil magic while I was taught Shinto magic. We have taught each other our respective forms, as well. Kiba and Kaneko are capable of devil magic, but not to as great a degree as we are. I supposed she asked me to tutor you as the Shinto methods of discovering your power and affinities is closer to the spellcasting you are familiar with. So lots of meditation, incense, and strange symbols painted on my body. Xander chuckled as he remembered a few of the early spells he'd been a part of. Yes, especially the last one, Yufufufu. Akino's slight giggle should have been a warning, but Xander wasn't quite aware of how deep he'd just stepped into it. Xander stopped dead in his tracks at the stack of boxes in front of the Hayadu home. For the briefest of moments he was worried that his new parents had taken a page out of the Harris books. However, the Italian labels on the boxes set his mind at ease. Letting out a breath he wasn't aware he was holding, he picked up the first of the boxes and started towards the door. Rias probably convinced the folks to let Asia move in. Let's hope she sleeps in her own bed. Oh, there you are, Xander, Miki Hayadu called out to the young man she believed was her son. Rias-chan was just discussing poor Asia-chan's plight. Yeah, she hasn't got any family she can rely on, Xander quickly picked up on the angle Rias was using. The Hayudis were unlike most Japanese families and held not 1 ounce of prejudice against gaijin. They were also very generous and hospitable people. I figured you'd trust Bucho-chan's evaluation more than mine. Both Rias and Asia both flashed confused looks hearing Xander's comment. Yes, well, if you had asked I would be worried you were back on the HRM king nonsense. Gora nodded sagely before turning to Asia, you will forgive me, but my son is a pervert. He only barely keeps from being a shameful one. Honestly, you might not want to live here, Asia. Yeah, I am just going to carry this up to the spare bedroom, Xander stated simply before he started towards the stairway. "Ah no, Xander-san has never been anything but kind to me," Asia responded as kindly as she did in every other situation. It was simply not in her to be mean even when someone was bad-mouthing her first friend. "He has helped me a great deal and I trust him." "I am surprised you can speak ill of your son, Hayado-san." Rias' voice was frosty as she addressed the man very formally. "Xander is well liked by the entire ORC and much of the student body. Just yesterday he earned the gratitude of the Kendo Club for patching a hole in the locker room wall." "I didn't mean to imply my son is some sort of hoodlum." Goro waved his hands in front of him as if warding off an attack. "It's just, well, he takes after his old man and I was what the kids today call a player. I wanted to warn you, is all." "A player?" Asia tilted her head in confusion. "Do you mean like that Pokemon game that Kaneko plays sometimes?" Goro was dumbfounded for a moment. He'd gotten that Asia was sheltered and innocent, but this level of naivete floored him. His brain sputtered for a few moments as he tried to formulate a response. He looked over to his wife and found she was in a similar state. "There was another reason I thought it would be good for Asia-chan to stay here." Rias decided to forge ahead with the conversation and dropped the frosty attitude the perceived slight on Xander had brought out in her. "Asia was raised in a convent, as such she hasn't learned all the skills a good wife should have. Bride training." Both Mickey and Goro's face lit up as they realized what Rias was hinting at. "We might get grandchildren after all. I would be happy to learn from you, Hayado-san." Asia stood before bowing deeply to Mickey. "You must call me Ka-san like Rias-chan does." Mickey waited for Asia to straighten back up before she hugged the young blonde. "Welcome to the family." "Ah no, Xander-san, I wanted to thank you for bringing in my clothing." Asia smiled warmly at Xander as she spoke. "I wasn't aware I had quite so much of it after shopping with Rias and Aquino. They kept sending the bags back to the old schoolhouse through portals." Xander couldn't help but look at Asia funny for a moment. "I have more clothing than she does." Shaking off the slight bit of disbelief he just smiled. "It was my pleasure, Asia-chan. And trust me, you had far less clothing than Buffy did when I helped her move." He patted the bed beside him, thankful that Rias was busy with a summons. He really liked the redhead, but there were times she was a little jealous of anyone spending time with him. "Why don't we talk a bit? I want to know how you are settling in being a devil." I thought I would feel guilty, but I don't." Asia was a little hesitant to speak her feelings in such a way. She'd already learned that praying to God or thanking him was a rather painful experience. Reading the Bible was impossible and she couldn't wear her cross anymore. "I have friends now. Kaneko, Kiba, Aquino, and Rainier. I have a big sister in Rias. I met your parents who treat me like a daughter. Most importantly, I met you, Xander-san. I don't think heaven could be any better than what I have right now." "You flatter me, ma'am." Xander adopted a breathy voice and pretended to swoon, sending Asia into giggles. "In all seriousness, I just want to make sure you're happy, Asia-chan. I wasn't able to save." Xander had to stop as Asia had put her finger to his lips to shush him. "You did the best you could," Asia said with conviction. "If not for you, Rias-ne would not have been able to bring me back and we wouldn't be as close as we are. So don't blame yourself." "All right, I'll just blame those fallen." Xander nodded. "So far the only good one is Ray-chan. Since you have mastered the ability to enter a state of calm so quickly, we can begin drawing out your devil power." Aquino was thoroughly impressed with Xander's progress. While Asia was a week ahead of him, Xander was learning the basics extraordinarily quickly. "Now, you should be able to feel a source of energy inside of you. When you touch upon it, you won't feel any strong emotions, just power. This is why the initial lessons in calming yourself are needed, so you can recognize that." "Alright, let's see." Xander had his eye closed as he searched internally. There were a number of wells of power that he could feel. The primal was easily recognizable by its overwhelming urges to hunt, protect, and breed in equal amounts. Sinya was similar, though more hunting and protecting than breeding. There was an unknown core that radiated anger and the need to dominate. Xander wasn't sure where it came from but knew he was not ready to touch upon it. After some searching he found the only well of power that could be considered close to how Akino described. Unlike the other, it was radiating any strong emotion, just a hint of lust. Great, I think my inner pervert is affecting my magic. I think I have it, Akino-sensei. Yufufu, and so quickly, Akino giggled behind her hand, her tone turned stuck in the blink of an eye. I think you might earn a special reward at this rate, Xander-kun. Keep your cool, Xander. Her wonderful melons might be on display in that top, but you have to ignore them for now. Xander tried to remind himself he was supposed to be learning magic, not ogling the wondrous fun bags of his instructor. I wouldn't mind another batch of chocolate chip cookies. Chocolate chip cookies. Akino, visibly deflated as he teasing was expertly deflected. Alright, but only if you can draw out your power by the end of the lesson today. Alright, now how do you do that? Xander nodded in agreement. Glad I derailed that teasing train. It was strong enough getting alone time to relieve myself with Rias around, but with Asia there too, it was becoming impossible. These girls are driving me to a bad case of blue ball. Hold your hands cupped in front of you, like so. Akino demonstrated just what she meant, though she intentionally used her arms to press her massive mammaries together, enhancing her already impressive cleavage. Then draw the power out of yourself. As she spoke, wisps of blue energy seeped out of her palms and began to gather in her cupped hands, then formed that energy into a ball. The wisps of blue compacted together until they formed a bright glowing ball the size of a volleyball. She's powerful. Almost Willow levels. Xander stared wide-eyed at the orb of blue energy. He'd seen many witches gather their power, and Akino blew most of them away. Shaking off the sense of ennui that caused in him, he concentrated on the well of power in himself and willed it to surface. Between his hands wisps of pink energy began to form. As with Akino's demonstration, they quickly started forming a ball. Unfortunately, the strands of power were not merging together perfectly. The coalescing mass of energy had visible streaks of red and white in the mass of pink. Is it supposed to be pulsing like that? No, it should be stable. Akino remarked as she looked at the softball-sized orb. True to Xander's word, it seemed to be pulsing with every heartbeat. It might be you're a bit too. The sphere of pink energy chose that moment to explode. Briefly forming a mandala that Akino had never seen before, the energy rushed towards her, striking her in the chest. The effects were immediate. Every last article of clothing that Akino was wearing ended up shredded into confetti. She was now standing in front of Xander completely naked. Did I just? Xander blinked rapidly. He only had one eye, but it didn't mean his vision impaired in any other way. He couldn't avoid memorizing Akino's curves at this point. Holy, she's as CC as Rias. This is so not fair. Era. If you wanted to see me NDE, then all you had to do was ask. Xander-kun, Akino sing-songed as she raised her arms above her head and did a slow twirl to let Xander see absolutely everything. Oh Mao. Xander breathed out. In his younger years he would have been a drooling, blushing mess, totally incapable of speaking anything but random syllables. I am going need a cold shower and an ice pack. So alright folks, that's all for today. Stay tuned for part 3. Do subscribe, like and share for more such videos. Also check out the story and author Scott the Wanderer on FANFICTIONnet. Press the bell icon to be notified first on release. See you in the next video. Till then, goodbye.